everybody. This is the Justifiable Noise Project, and we are on episode number 8, titled Election 2020, Who You Got? I'm here with my colleagues, Kyle and Audrey, and I'd like to just start off the podcast with just a quick quote. This quote comes from James Baldwin, and I thought that it was quite apropos for the times that we're in. Ignorance allied with power is the most ferocious enemy justice can have. And then I would like to just say a change is needed, a new vision for all people. So hence, we're talking about election 2020. Let's talk about the candidates, Audrey. There's a slew of them out there. Who are they?
Okay, so I'm going to first talk about the 3 Republican candidates because it's a shorter list, okay? So we have Bill Weld, we also have Joe Walsh, and we have Mark Sanford. Now, I don't know about Bill and Joe, but remember Mark Sanford was the former South Carolina governor, I believe.
Yeah, isn't he still walking the Appalachian Trail?
Yeah, claim that he got lost when he was actually somewhere, I think, in another country with a woman, with his mistress.
I want to say maybe Argentina. I know he was in Central America.
Yes,
with another woman.
Yes, with another woman. So that kind of brought him down. Huh?
He was in South America.
Okay, so I know that brought him down. What makes him think he can now run for president? I don't know, but I guess based on what we have,
redeeming quality,
okay, right? He thinks it's okay. All right, so no, I don't want to leave.
I just want to say one thing. I've listened to some of the things he's had to say, not knowing that he was the same guy that was in South America with his mistress. And I kind of like the things that he said.
He had to say, okay, so so we're not going to count him out. All right, so those are the 3 Republican candidates. Now, of course, everyone knows we have a slew of Democratic candidates. I'm just going to list them by name, the 19 who are still in. And that's, let me just go through. So Michael Bennet, Joe Biden, Cory Booker, Steve Bullock, Pete Buttigieg, Julian Cash.
Buttigieg.
I'm sorry, Pete. All right. Julian Castro, John Delaney, Tulsi Gabbard, Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar, I think.
Yes.
Wayne Messam, who is the one of 3, right? African Americans running. Beto O'Rourke, Tim Ryan, Bernie Sanders, Joe Sestak, Tom Steyer, Elizabeth Warren, and Marianne Williamson, and Andrew Yang. Now, of those...
I just want to interject.
Okay.
Julian Castro. How do we know some days he's not going to swap out with his brother being president?
Oh my God! Stop it!
That's a little tricky.
Before we get to that, he has an identical twin. Yes, he was also
Joaquin.
Politics. Who was also in politics.
Joaquin.
All right. Well, that will back us up if something happens to him. So I think it's good. All right. So let's move on. So now these are the ones that dropped out so far. Mayor Bill de Blasio, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. Yeah, I don't know what de Blasio was thinking, and that's my mayor. Mike
Name recognition.
Bell. That's your mayor too, Kyle. John Hickenlooper, Jay Inslee, Seth Moulton, Richard Ojeda, Eric Swalwell. Those are the ones that have dropped out. Okay, now, of the 19 who are still in, and we can talk about this as well, there's some issue with the debates and who qualifies, and I just kind of looked that up quickly, but the ones who have not qualified for the next debate in October are Michael Bennet, John Delaney, Tulsi Gabbard, Wayne Messam, Tim Ryan, Joe Sestak, and Marianne Williamson. Now, a question mark is by Tom stayer because apparently
He's got the money.
He didn't qualify for. I'm trying to just look really quick. He didn't qualify, I think, for the last two election debates, but he did qualify, has qualified for the October one. So I guess you can't count him out yet, but yeah, that's what's going on with him. Yeah, he didn't make the debates for July and September, but he has qualified for the one in October. So, that's what's going on with him. And then, of course, there's been something I saw, some bad press about Andrew Yang, in terms of the type of person he was. The company that he founded or was in charge of, a woman wrote how she got married and had been pretty high up in the company under him, got married, and he called her in the office and said that you can no longer work here because now you're married. Now you're going to be focused on being a wife. That's what she's saying he did. And she was no longer employed there. So, that's kind of a question mark on him. Okay. But, basically those are the 19 Democratic candidates still in the running, right? Still with their hat in the ring, and the 3 Republican candidates with their hats in the ring.
All right, let's get hot here.
Wait, you forgot to mention the incumbent.
Oh, Jesus. Yes.
What do you mean the incumbent?
Donald Trump.
Well, I'm saying, yes, candidate, right? So those are the 4. I choose not to think about him, and definitely will not say his name. So yes, but you're right. There's 4, but I'm just in terms of who's challenging, right? I wasn't necessarily talking about the sitting person, but okay. So this is where we're at. Thank you. Those are the candidates. Look them up, and see what their platforms are.
Yeah, and I think that it's very important. What we'll discuss here today will not cover absolutely all of the information because for time restrictions, it's virtually impossible that we can really touch upon everything that everybody has within everybody's platform. But I would like to tell every listener that they should definitely go to each candidate's website. Every candidate has a website. You go there, the first thing you hit, you get hit up for donations, of course, but then there is a plethora of information that each candidate has on their website. So by all means, I would say, and I'll mention it now, and I'll try and remember at the end to say it again. Before you vote, know who you're voting for. Now, with that being said, I just want to open up that Pandora's box.
Okay, but before you say that, let me ask a question, Dre. So, to be honest with you, right now, there's no voting going on, right? There's no voting. So do we need to really get that deep into the candidates until this thing shakes out? Because I could be into a candidate and it turns out to be, what I'm saying, not really be someone that's going to be a viable candidate. So is that something we need to be doing?
No.
At this point, other than listening to the debates. To me, that's what we need to be doing.
No, you pay attention to the debates, you garner knowledge as to who the candidates are, but we happen to live now in a environment, whereas when I was younger, when CNN first came out, it was a 24-hour news station. It is now a 24-hour station for politics. Occasionally, if there is breaking news of something happening, a mass shooting, whether it be some type of natural disaster or something within that realm, that is the only time that I actually find out anything about it, find out anything outside of politics here in the United States, and of course, sometimes overseas. So with that being said, I just believe that you don't need to make a choice as to who you're going to vote for right now, but it would behoove you to start getting an understanding. How you just mentioned Andrew Yang, and he may there's an alleged discretion in his background, I don't know it. You'd have to find out, wait for it. But you look into this stuff. Now, I was going to say you open up the Pandora's box because offline, I think we've all kind of touched on, the chess game that goes on with this election right now. I mean, truth be told, the theory is, the title of the show is one thing, but the theory is most people want anybody but Trump. So with that being said, I still think that it would behoove everybody to look at the candidates, know what their platform is, and go from there.
I would just like to interject that even if you don't make a decision now, you're still kind of putting out there who you like for the reasons that you like that person.
Yeah, and that way they're able, hopefully, because this is also a money thing. I tell you, you go to the pages, and the first thing you see is donate, donate, donate.
Oh, absolutely, of course.
Yeah, and you're hoping that the candidate, as you were saying, is there, over the long term, so that as these debates start to weed down, you get to see how they may differentiate amongst themselves their platforms. Because as I go through each candidate's platform online, a lot of it is pretty much the same. A lot of it is the same. I try and find some nuances here and there, but by and large, it is pretty much the same. But
so let's say that the candidate that you like is an environmental candidate, and he's all about the environment. Should that rule him out?
Well, that ruled out I think it was either the past governor of Washington, because that was all he ran.
Oh, that was all he talked about. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I do think, but I don't know. I guess
I'd like to say that that is very important, and what we'll do next is really just start talking about what's important to us. We'll talk about the candidates next. But let's talk about, what is important to you? What do you feel is important to your family? When I say your family, it can be your brother, your siblings, your parents, so on and so forth. And maybe if you have nieces and nephews, what's going to be important, to them?
Well, go ahead, Kyle.
Go ahead, Kyle.
I would like to see a strong candidate. I don't want to see somebody that's wishy-washy and kind of mealy-mouthed. I want to see a strong candidate. And I don't know that if my idea of a strong candidate is the candidate that can get Trump out of office, but I'm thinking beyond Trump, and I want the candidate to be strong.
Well, give me an idea of, break down to the listeners, what is strong?
Right. What do you mean by that?
To me, when I say strong, I want somebody that can stand up for an idea. They're not going to just talk and like I remember when Bush was candidate, when Bush was president.
Bush
we
Jr.?
always said what's that?
Bush Jr.
Bush, the second Bush.
Junior. Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, he's not a junior, but yes.
Right. The second Bush. Everyone always said, hey, he speaks funny, he doesn't say the right things, and he's always getting caught in saying something that's not right. And that's not what I want. I want somebody that's strong in their conversation.
Okay.
Okay, so and strong in their position, right? So whatever position they have, be consistent in the message. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah. Knowledgeable, strong in their position, being able to convey their message across to the people.
Okay.
How
yeah,
about you,
I think and we had this conversation yesterday, Dre, that I am definitely of the mindset leaning more to less of issues, but who can beat Donald Trump. Now, I think for people that will come down to where they're at in the issues, but I also feel that for me, what has to be at the top above any issues at this point, because of where we're at, is who can beat 45, right? Who can beat Donald Trump. Now, second to that, though, it's interesting as I was realizing today, I mean, I think I've heard, and I don't watch TV. In fact, I don't even have a TV. because I don't have cable and all of that. So anyway, so I don't watch a lot of news and things. So a lot of information I get is just solely internet based. But one of the things, as I was, I had heard that there were a couple of Republican candidates, didn't really know who they were, had not heard that one of them was Mark Sanford. But when I realized there were the three, I actually said, is this a secondary strategy, right? So as we're looking at which Democrats could beat Trump, could we have, also as our backup, which one of these Republicans could possibly take the nomination, but if not that, maybe we would have a similar situation in terms of voting that we had in 2016, where people didn't like the Democrats didn't necessarily like Clinton, so didn't vote. So maybe we'll have a situation where their votes would also be split, right? Could possibly be a situation to that. So I thought that was interesting to have three come up at this point in time. And I think if they can move forward on the Republican side to debates, that may really make a difference as well. Then I'm also reading, has this ever happened? Has the sitting, president in a party ever been, ever lost a nomination? And they're saying, no, not in the last, 50 years, but it did happen like in the 1800s. But they did say when when any party, if the sitting president is being challenged by his own party or his, because that's all we've had, their own party, that normally that's a predictor that they will lose the election.
Well,
let me ask you a quick question. If Trump was not the candidate, would that affect who you choose?
What do you mean in terms of on the Democrat side?
On the Democrat side.
Let's say there was no Donald Trump. Well, it means that I would then be more focused on their platform. You see what I'm saying? So if there wasn't an issue of, Donald Trump, like I said, for me, that's my primary issue. Who is strong enough to beat him, right? And
so your choice.
If Donald Trump was out of the equation, then I would be focused on the issues. But I also think whoever the strongest Democratic candidate is, what's going to be an underlying issue for them will be their platform. Okay, they can't just their platform can't just be I'm the one that can beat Trump, right? It has to be around the issues. And so I think that's what's going to help the candidate a lot. But again, it has to be someone like, particularly as you get down to the point of debates, they got to hold their own because he's crazy, right? He's going to say anything. They have to hold it together. They have to be able to stick to it. And like you said, not flip-flop, be consistent. We don't want something coming back that, 20 years ago, they were in blackface. It's like we can't have none of that. These candidates got to be, kind of squeaky clean, for lack of a better word, because we can't afford to have something, let's say we get close and have something come out like the emails, right? We can't have that.
So what I was trying to say is that the candidate that you pick might not really be your candidate of choice because you're basing who you pick as the candidate on who can beat Trump.
Right.
But
So
not
in terms
necessarily
of issues,
who you actually like.
Yeah, right. You're right. I mean, in terms of issues, yes, in terms of issues. But again, I feel like people are going to look at the issues of these candidates, and I'm saying, the majority voters, and the issues are still going to play a part. I don't think that the issues will not, take necessarily be not relevant, right? But the issues will play a part. But the lead issue for me is going to be who can beat 45. Okay.
I look at Sanford,
Mm-hmm.
and at this present time, just based on what occurred in his background,
Uh-huh.
unless redemption is all there for him, I would say that Trump would eviscerate him.
Right. Right.
And just think about it. All he did was go. He ran away to be with a lady. This guy's bought out ladies. He's had many ladies.
Right.
But for some reason,
I went to go hiking, man.
Yeah, I didn't see him on the trail though. That's the only I saw.
But what did you?
If he was looking for the Appalachian Trail and he ended up in South America, he doesn't need to be a hiker. I'll let you know.
And doesn't need to be president, right? Clearly doesn't need to be president. But Kyle, what did you say about him?
He doesn't even know the whole country. He ended up in South America.
Kyle, what did you say about him though before?
I said I heard some of the things that he said, and I thought to myself, hey, that's interesting. You know, this might be somebody I'm going to look and hear more of what he has to say.
Uh-huh.
And then I heard that he was the same guy that was on the trail with this woman.
Right. So yeah, so no. So I guess that's where I stand. One of the things also that was interesting, Dre, you had put on the list about the issues, and I guess I want to just talk about one of the issues that kind of popped out for me that I keep trying to figure.
Are you going to start hitting on, because I really like to dig into what issues, as I said, that are important to us.
Yeah, so I'm going through the list and I'm looking at one of the issues that you listed.
Okay.
So can I talk about it, or you want me to wait? Okay. So
I want to know what you mean by us, Andre.
What's that?
When you say the issue is important to us, who's us?
Well, we're speaking for ourselves because we can't speak for the entire population. So what I'm saying, what's important to you, your family, and your friends, and maybe also your community, that things that you have heard. So I know from a standpoint of you're against Trump, that the truth that's out there is that people are trying to vote for anybody but Trump. You know, that's the chess game there. But I think it's still important to know what the issues are that are out there. And you know, I'm gonna tell you why. And well, no, issues are just important. So it's not a matter of telling you why later on. Issues are important. I just think that people should still want to know, you know, if you're gonna vote, let's say for Biden, you know, what does he stand for? He should be more than he was just the vice president under Obama. He shouldn't be running solely on the coattails of Obama. And what happens, you know, since that's that chess game, as I said, what happens if all of a sudden his numbers start declining? You're going to have to then know a little bit about the other candidates, because people may need to flood to a whole nother candidate that can beat Trump, if that's the avenue that you're walking down. So let's talk about issues that are important. We could continue talking about the chess game, but I still think the issues are important.
See, that's what I find weird, is that we're going to flood to another candidate because our candidate of choice's numbers go down.
Well, we have to. That's the process. If we just, because this is exactly what happened last time, right? The Sanders supporters threw their hands up and didn't want to vote for Hillary, right? They just didn't vote. So that's the problem. Yeah, you got to go to the next person. You absolutely have to go to the next person. You need to hopefully have your top three, but yes, absolutely. Because that's the process. If my main candidate doesn't make it, then I have to go to the next person. I can't not vote. That's why we in this position now, because people didn't vote. Didn't want her, didn't want him, didn't vote, which was by default a vote for him. So yes, so people, and I think
you still gotta pick the person you like.
Okay, but this is the thing. If your main person, we got a list of 19 people now, shaken down from 26. Obviously, it's going to shake down even further, right? By next year when we actually start doing primaries and stuff like that. So you have to go into this thing again and see, this is where I'm different from everybody else, or maybe a lot of people. What's my primary thing? Getting that man out of office, right? And so, yeah, I might have a candidate that I feel strongly about, but if that does not, if that person, if the one I feel strongly about doesn't end up getting the nomination, I'm going with the person who gets the nomination. Period. Period.
Well, I'm always going to go with the person that wins the nomination.
But not everybody is doing that. So that's what I'm saying. So when you ask the question, what happens when your person, doesn't get the nomination, you go with the person that does. That's what I'm saying.
Let's say I like Yang.
Okay.
In the primary.
You like Yang, or you want the $1,000 a month?
Let's say I like Yang.
Okay.
Yang in the primaries because he's the one I like.
Okay.
Right.
But he doesn't make it.
Right. So and it's Biden. We got to vote for Biden. That's it. There's no issue. I'm a vote for Biden or versus not voting for Trump. Absolutely. Now, I don't personally want Biden, but I also don't think Biden is going to make it. I think Biden has 2 strikes against him. I think I think 3 things happen. The one thing about going across the aisle and loving up on the on the races. I think that's 1. 2, I think the fact that he was Obama's vice president is already a strike against him for many people. And 3,
for some people that's a strike in favor.
Well, no, I'm saying for some people, I'm just talking about the things I think are at issue with him. And then 3, I feel like that whole thing about women saying that, he made them uncomfortable and the way that he responded. I mean, he wasn't remorseful about it. I mean, because there's one thing to how you respond if you feel like, you did something, right? But even if you feel like you didn't, if the person was made uncomfortable or hurt by it, there is a way to respond to that. And he was not, he wasn't like, he just, I'm just going to watch myself the next time. Really nothing that said, I'm sorry if what I did, made you feel uncomfortable. That really was not my intent. I apologize. I will be, glad you brought it to my attention. Make sure I handle myself differently the next time. Period. He didn't do that. So I think all of those things are going to not make him, like I said, he's not my first choice. I did like him as a vice president, but he's definitely not my first choice.
It's interesting you didn't mention Anita Hill at all.
Yes, that issue as well. I really kind of don't always remember his involvement in that, but yes, that as well. But I mean, that was just first of all, I feel like those kind of to me, what I see when it comes down to the Supreme Court hearings, I don't know. I think they're gonna get the people in, period, except for the other guy with the B, right?
Well, that's interesting. I do think, once again, that's why you need to go back to knowing the issues of each candidate and what what some of their thoughts are.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to ask Kyle, what are some of the issues that are important to you, your family, and your community? Answer that for me.
Mm-hmm.
I want a strong candidate. I want a knowledgeable candidate. And I want a candidate that people can believe in.
What is some of
that's not issues, Kyle. You got to be specific.
That's
you
not
got the paper. That's not issues. That don't say nothing.
I'd like to know what's important to you.
That's weak, Kyle. That's weak. Stop it.
Thank you for calling. What is that? I'm not going to go ahead.
Yeah, that's weak.
Yeah. Answer the question.
Answer the question.
I want a strong candidate.
What? Hell no. Stop it. What's the issue, man?
I don't have my papers right in front of me.
Oh my God. You are so pitiful.
What do you
You don't need a paper to know what's important to you. What? Kyle, we'll come back to you.
Okay, come back to me.
The listeners want to know something, Kyle.
You know what's interesting? Our shows travel all throughout the United States, many states. And if I look at some of the shows where we are internationally, we're in, oh geez, down the Appalachian Trail in Peru, because we have followers in South America, we have followers in Europe, we have followers. Can you hear me, Russia? In Russia.
Ah, all right, Russia.
So they're looking and they're saying, here's this brother who is on here, and they're asking him about what issues are important to him, and he's not answering. But Audrey, I'm going to let you go because Kyle's going to have his answer in a few minutes.
All right. So let me say what my issues are. I was going to talk about one of the issues that I have an issue with. I feel like for me and my circle, the taxes, for middle class, that's definitely an issue.
Okay.
When you say taxes, are they too high, too low?
Well, yeah, we're not going to be complaining if they too low. Right?
You're a
Mr. Johnson, what's going on? Just don't say nothing. Just don't stop talking.
Together, brother.
Yes, because they too high. Okay. I think another issue is the lack of affordable housing. I would say I'm kind of on the fence about universal health care only because I feel like often many people have health care. I would say the majority have health care through their workplace, right? That's one thing. The second thing is there is Medicaid out there if you have low income. I would say the issue around health care to me in terms of like an really overhaul reform is more around people who are self-employed, who may make good money, not eligible for Medicaid, who are struggling because insurance premiums are high. Like there might need to be better pools of insurance around that. There is, there's a couple of places. I know there's a place around here, New York locally that has insurance for, self-employed people. But one of the things I can say about that, because I used them early on in my career as a entrepreneur, and their insurance was much better. I think a big part of the issue is the cost of insurance more than is it available. Because even though so when I looked at, let's say when I first started being an entrepreneur, 2005, 2006 maybe, and started getting, insurance on my own, it was very reasonable. It was reasonable monthly premium. It was reasonable in terms of, the deductibles, right? Very reasonable. Now, they still offer it, but to get like a premium that makes sense, that's affordable, their deductibles are ridiculous. And I think that's a bigger issue. Instead of just saying
it becomes very prohibitive.
Yeah, because even with universal health care, if that's still an issue, that the deductible is like, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, that's a problem. That's still, so that's almost like this whole thing where they count the numbers of people who are in the employment, right? And that, the job, more people have jobs. Okay, but are they still making the same money? Probably not. So is that still, dealing with their economic situation? No, right? Because they might have a job, but if they're making 50% less, that's a problem. So for me, I think I think the people who are impacted most by this whole healthcare situation, they're not listening to those people. Because like I said, it's not, people are getting insurance, but they still not able to really use it because the deductible is so high, right? So, like I said, I think there's a healthcare conversation that needs to happen, but I think it's not just solely universal health care, because that still could be not affordable for most people. All right, so I got that. Definitely criminal justice reform. I think is a big issue for me and mine. Not necessarily that I have a lot of people really impacted by the criminal justice system, but I just take all, black and brown people as my people when I talk about the need for that, right? So I, thinking about that, there has been that thing that came up with um, the black mother who just used a different address so her son could go to a better school and got some time. And I mean, I think that, she might have had some criminal issues too, but just looking at that issue itself, where that was a thing that maybe made her draw attention to them versus, Felicity Huffman getting the, the 2 weeks or something like that, less than a month. And then, she can volunteer. Those are the disparities that we need to address. So like I said, not necessarily on a personal level, but in terms of community, that's an issue.
You think the president will have to deal with that?
The president, huh?
You think the president will have to deal with that issue about the fact that Felicity Huffman only got a couple of weeks?
Well, when you're talking about criminal justice reform, it's a broad statement, but you're looking at the justice system and how people are penalized. You have that, just like you have inequality of pay, you have inequality of how people are
sentencing
in sentencing.
Right.
You're trying to create some type of equality where, say, for instance, if you have money, you'll only do this amount of time because you have this type of lawyer. Whereas if you may not have the money to spend and get a very good lawyer, you may be very quick to take a deal that is really not a deal in your benefit. You could possibly also be innocent, which we've seen in so many cases. I mean, look at all the cases that were overturned in Brooklyn and many more that are still to come. And we also look right at the exonerated 5. So criminal justice reform is very important. The president, along with Congress, can set the tone. Yes, definitely on the federal side, but it also sets the tone. Everything the trickle down process sets the tone that what's happening locally as well.
Right. And I think that this whole issue of, police killings, under that whole issue around criminality, right? Look at that situation. The black man killed the white woman. They convicted him like that, right? And then, but they have not seemed to be able to do that in other cases, right? So that's like clear, very clear. Same thing. So
are these issues on a local level or on a national level?
I think they're both. I think, I definitely, all the things that I'm listing are across the country, right? So definitely locally, it starts locally, right? That's what we see, but it's definitely broad issues.
Yeah, because so I think one thing that many people have to really understand, when you're electing a president, you're electing federal judges, you're electing local judges just as well, because they have influence upon who, because you're also looking at a president that comes out and helps to get the governor in office, that also helps, on the state level. Everything is a trickle down process. We can no longer look at in such a singular way. Okay, I'm just trying to get this guy in office in Washington. Everything is very important. And, hopefully we'll get a chance to touch on it a little bit longer. Any other issues for you?
Okay, so I'm saying that I kind of, I circled the gun control, but I don't think that that's even something that's going to happen. My thing has always been, if they did not get some gun laws in place when they killed those white babies in Connecticut, it's not going to happen, right? Because if you can have somebody kill white babies, right, like that, in a mass way like that, and they don't know how to get this thing together, I don't see that. So that's not so much I'm not putting that as a platform. I think the ending of voter suppression, I just personally feel that we have to, in our communities, to stay strong with pushing for voting and be educated on what our rights are around, the right to vote. And so I don't know if we need to necessarily, I think it's important, I think it's problematic, but I don't know if with everything else we're trying to navigate, if that's something that we need to be pushing forward with. But I think that we just need on a community-based level, like they used to do in years past when they were, beating us and killing us when voter suppression was, more violent. We were coming together, right? Picking people up and making sure people had a ride to get to the voting poll and make sure that, there was a support system. So if someone tried to tell them they couldn't vote, they felt strong enough to speak up. And I think that's the case. And I think I have somebody, a close friend of mine who I was shocked a few months ago when he said, well, I haven't voted in the last 2 elections, and my mouth was hanging open. I couldn't even talk to him. I mean, the level of ignorance I thought around that, particularly as a Black man, knowing what our ancestors have gone through for us to be able to vote, for him to just throw that out there as if, it was some righteous thing to say. I'm like, I can't even have a conversation with that, because that's just a level of ignorance I can't get to.
Well, so, I'd like to say, when you talk about voter suppression, you also throw in gerrymandering, and that is something that definitely on the federal level, whether it be the Supreme Courts, the federal courts, they definitely, those are the places where the major decisions are made. It is the courts, it is the Department of Justice that fights that. And once again, that's where you start off from who you elect as your president, what their platform is, sure, and who they're going to elect it to go in place. Those judges have lifetime memberships.
Right.
So
right.
It is definitely it's very important, from the federal side and down.
Right. And again, some of these things I, do feel are important, but do I feel like it's something that I'm putting, when I look at a candidate, like if they don't talk about that, I'm gonna, not be happy. I think that's where I'm coming from. And then I guess last thing I will say before we go to somebody else is I definitely think there needs to be term limits for Congress, because to be honest, I feel like some of these Congress people, even on the Democratic side, they're not really stepping up like they're supposed to be. And so I kind of question the fact that at our highest office, we have term limits, and on the, state and local level, there's term limits, but there's no term limits for the Congress. And so I do think that is something that we have to deal with. But again, that's probably like a secondary or maybe third priority. It's not like my top priorities, okay, in that.
All right.
And then lastly, I'm sorry. Lastly, before you interject, climate change and the environment, all of that, I know that not everybody in my circle is doing it. I'm trying to pay more attention to it, just trying to do some basic things where I'm really more conscious of having like my reusable shopping bags and saying no, like if I could stick something in my purse, not taking the plastic bag. So I think it's important. Again, it's not in terms of where I'm going to place my focus. I'm not going to be, if someone doesn't talk about that, I'm not going to, hold it against them, but I do think it's something important. Okay. Yes.
Okay. I was just going to interject, and I was thinking about the Felicity Huffman issue.
Yes.
And the fact that she only got a small amount of time. That's something that my parents did. When it was time for us to go to school, they didn't want us to go to the school in the area where we lived. So they made us memorize addresses for other communities so we can go to schools in other neighborhoods. And that's just the way we got by to do things. So my parents would have been accused of the same things she would have been accused of.
Well, I think that
trying to get their kids into good schools.
I want to say it's on a whole different level from the standpoint of paying, thousands of dollars, doctoring who their kids were,
having people take tests for them.
Having their SAT scores either changed or the test being taken for them.
Right.
It's very different than someone saying, and I'll use locally, I want to get into the South Orange Maplewood school areas because when I grew up, that was we lived in a place where you had the best school system. So I wanted to, people always were being watched to see if they were coming in from other neighborhoods to get into the school and get to get a good education where they technically, if you're looking, they're not paying taxes in that area.
Right. That's supposed to be the issue, but I don't know if that's really the biggest issue. Right. But that's because to me, but I think that I've heard that there's some places where there's something that they allow you, some places
they'll allow you to pay.
Right. They'll allow you to pay.
Right.
So you can do that. Yes.
When I look at them trying to get into schools such as USC and that saying that my kid they took scholarship positions.
Yes.
Positions in school. They took positions away. And the thing that burns the hell out of me, I can remember being at USC and I remember they were talking, there was always that saying that, there were some white kids that said, hey, and nobody ever said it to me, but friends would say, they heard people say to them, well, they're here because of this. Or
affirmative action. They're here because of affirmative action. Yeah.
And these only to hear later on that these kids are there because, hey, their parents paid for them to be there.
Right.
They're going to pay all that money. They could have just paid the extra money for their kids to take extra schooling, tutelage at a resource center to do better on their tests.
Right. Or let them go to the school that they have the ability to go to, because if they can't get in on their own merit, it means they're not going to be able to do the work.
Correct.
Right? So that's the underlying issue. They're not even going to be able to be successful.
One child said, hey, go to class?
Right.
Really? But hey, I don't want to get too sidetracked on that issue.
But what I will say...
Well, let me say this thing before you jump to the next issue. I think it's all about the parents trying to get the best possible education for their kids.
But what we're talking about is the disparity.
But we're not talking about the elementary school where you're trying to get the best education in elementary school.
Right. You're not paying anything. You're not doing. The only thing you're doing is letting the child use a different address. But the other thing that I want to say about this is where white folks need to understand the disparities in how we are treated as Black people. That's what they got to understand. When they look at these things where they try to figure out why we upset, this is why we're upset, because it's not fair, right? This situation, the situation with the black cop killing the white woman, which all of it is wrong, right? Let's be clear about that. All of it is wrong, but only the harsh penalties are on the Black people. That's what they got to look at.
Right. So the issue is not necessarily the discrimination, because there's discrimination. We definitely don't want that. But we also want the best for our kids. And I think about people trying to even get into this country. They're trying to get into this country because they want the best for themselves. They don't want to be in a small country where there's discrimination and there's violence. They're trying to come here and get the best.
I'm sorry, but everything you just mentioned is what happens in this country. There's discrimination and violence.
So let's work on the issue of discrimination and violence, and not people's solutions to fix this, how they get by under discrimination and violence.
But these people, and as I said, I really want to put that topic to bed. The people that we're talking about that juke the system to get into schools where they were paying, they weren't being discriminated against in any way, shape, or form. They are the majority, and they have the
best for the kids.
they have the financial capability to either pay to go through school or pay their way into the school. One parent said, "Well, I didn't know what I was doing. I thought it was like how everybody else pays for for a building." Well, Jesus, you know what? My parents didn't pay for a building. And maybe somebody should have said that, it's like Dr. Dre. People that definitely came and Dr. Dre is definitely wealthy. And people asked him, hey, did your daughter really do well on her SATs? Or is it because you donated money to USC?
And what was the answer?
Dre didn't answer that question.
Okay.
But that's the answer. And and not to say that I would have preferred that worked that way for these people that were busted, but this happens to be the lowest of the low when you find out how they went about it. It wasn't that they bought and erected buildings that were put in their name. No, they were paying their way through the system.
Right.
So I just want to talk about some of the issues that are very important to me going into 2020. You talked about healthcare. Healthcare is definitely very, very important, whether it be the quality of being able to see a doctor and not to have to dole out a lot of money when doing so, whether it be what do you call them again? You were saying
the deductibles, the co-pays, and all of that.
Deductibles and co-pays.
Mm-hmm.
I look at that. But most important, I look at prescription drugs.
Yes.
When I say we as a country, we allow prescription big pharma a lot of write-offs for creating those drugs in this country. Mm-hmm. Now, there are ways that people, if you're poor, that you may be eligible, I should say, to get certain drugs from pharmaceutical companies if you meet their threshold economically. Mm-hmm. So that provision is there. But by and large, when you see a lot of discrepancies between, let's just look at our next door neighbor, Canada, and us, and say, hey, you're better off getting on a bus and going to Canada to get your prescription because it is so much cheaper. It is so much cheaper. So that's something that's very important to me. Free higher education. Now, why do I say free higher education is important? In order for this country's economy to prosper, education is always important. It shouldn't just be for the person that has money. It should be for every person that has the ability to that wants to be mobile. As Kyle says, everybody wants something better for the kids and for themselves. So free education is definitely something that is important to me. The ability to write off some of the student loan debt that's out there. Nobody really touches on that every single day, but that is swelling and it is outrageous at this point in time. But that's something.
But I have a commentary on that, but I'll let you finish.
Let me finish my list because
okay.
I don't want us to go through so much time and not get through everything we want to say. Reducing taxes for the middle class is very important. I know that most people believe that the last federal tax cut was important. It was not that important for the middle class. It was an amendment for corporations and also for the wealthy. So a true tax cut for the middle class is what I think is very important. Tax cut and also a tax credit. What else? Universal gun and ammunition. I can kind of laugh right now and say that Audrey can't fall out because we did do a pass the peace, and it was on universal gun.
You know what? You're stupid. I'm not outside. I'm not hot.
Yes.
And I have eaten.
So, I mean, that is key to having a federal license versus state by state. as I mentioned, and anybody that's listening right now can go to our little piece right here for our YouTube page. You can go listen to the Pass the Peas part where we talk about the ending loopholes, whether it be for the straw sales, whether it be for the mentally ill, whether it be for anybody that happened to have battered their loved one. But most importantly, there is no need for an AK-15, any AK or large weapon in this country. I have a license.
In this country, total?
No. I'm
what
talking.
If you live in the South?
Well, I'm talking about it doesn't matter if you're in the South. Doesn't matter. I mean,
I'd sure want one if I lived in the South.
Well, okay.
Why?
Okay, but
in case somebody's coming into my property.
Well, but then you can get a shotgun. Do you need 100 rounds to shoot one person? To be quite honest, if you're a good shot and you are licensed properly, you would know how to shoot somebody with just 2. You don't need 100 per clip. You don't need a bear isn't coming in to kill you. Matter of fact, several bears are coming in to kill you.
I have a friend that lives in South Carolina.
Yeah.
And she lives so far back out in the woods.
Get a shotgun.
If she heard a jingling at her door and she called the police, it would probably be 45 minutes before.
Yeah, but the issue is the type of weapon, Kyle. That's what he's talking about.
I'm not saying take away everybody's weapons. You can have a 45 millimeter. You can have a shotgun. Pick your choice of what you want to pick up when you hear that.
You don't need a machine gun.
You don't need a machine gun. Last time I checked, a person.
A single fire AK-47 wouldn't do.
I just said no. You get yourself a 9 and you have yourself a shotgun. End of story there. Not swaying me. Term limits, very important in Congress. Mm-hmm. People have been, if we look at the state of America, it's supposed to be the richest place in the world. At this point in time, homelessness, which, you guys both live in New York City, and I have no idea how that wasn't one of the first things that came out of your heads, but homelessness is very important, and mental illness. That is very key. The current president in office, one that was out in California, the fundraiser, and all he could do is think about how bad it was for business. Well, there are reasons why people are homeless, whether it be mental illness, the breakup of a family home, the loss of a job, if they happen to be suffering from, taking drugs or alcoholism. There are so many different reasons. So if you go through the cities, whether it be New York City, and you see people in the subway, I mean, nobody likes maybe the smell or the look, but it is part of what is going on. We talk about how, the increasing cost of everything in major cities. If you look at homelessness in California and let's say Los Angeles or San Francisco, it is very big there. So that is something that needs to truly be addressed. But I was talking about term limits, and I digress for a moment. I say that's also very important, whether it be in Congress, all throughout Congress. I also believe in now term limits for the Supreme Court, and that would, right now they have jobs for life. I don't think that anybody should have a job for life. I believe that new blood should always be coming through the system, and I believe that Supreme Court judges are nearly now so politicized, or the election of them is so politicized that we now really need to, take away the time that they're in their position. Criminal justice reform. I think we touched on that. I really wouldn't have to say much more for that. That's very important. Global warming, without a doubt. Neither one of you sit by a major body of water, but if I'll tell the quick story. When we had Sandy, and I never thought that the water would ever come from about 1.5 miles. Now, it didn't come up the street, but it was right down the hill. And the thought of, I think we look at tidal waves when we think about water coming in. No, the water comes up right through the sewer system, right into the streets. I can remember going down the hill afterwards, and where I never thought water was going to come, everybody had stuff out on the streets after that. You look at global warming from the effects of our food supply, very important. The changing from the current fossil fuel system that we presently have would also mean that we are no longer reliant. I mean, we're not as reliant on oil, petro from the Middle East, OPEC.
You know that the United States is one of the largest oil-producing countries now.
Correct. And just to touch on that, we would no longer think about having to go into places that are protective wetlands right now or off the coast of New Jersey, because the only thing that you hear later on when something happens and the oil is spreading closer to the shores, we're going to try and do better. So no, you look at alternative energy sources. Exxon, everybody can read up on how Exxon had known how bad fossil fuels were years ago, and they suppressed it by lobbying the government for years. They've known about it for years, and the documents are right out there, so you can definitely look that up. So global warming, very, 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 very important. What else would be most important to me? I touched on quite a few options. Also, the national debt. The national debt, whereas I talked about raising, the ability to have a free education system, I do believe that you want to raise taxes on the wealthy. I know that many people that may hear this will say, that you want to come and take more money out my pocket. I don't think that you should be able to create off of the backs of others, because anytime that you're making billions of dollars, you're creating off of the back of somebody. Somebody is not doing as well as you. If somebody in McDonald's has to fight for $15 an hour and the CEO made, let's say, 15 million for the year, the worker is there. He's not the main worker. He's not the main worker. Now, we talked about doing a session on AI and how all of that will change. We'll talk about that later. But I do believe that you have to look at a way of taxing the wealthy to pay for some of these programs, and also to lower the debt. When this current tax that went into effect by the president, it increased their net worths. It didn't really increase the net worths of anybody else. So it's really time for the wealthy to pay their share. And as I said earlier, a change is needed, and those are some of the changes that I feel that are very important. Kyle, we've touched on a lot of things, so there may not be a lot left on the table, but I would think that somewhere within...
What's your top three, Kyle? What's your top three, man?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to say that of the things that you've mentioned, most of the Democrats will support those things. They will support that.
Kyle.
How?
I'm asking you. Personally. I'm asking you.
What do I think?
Yeah. Why are you dancing around this?
I think that the candidate has to be a strong candidate, or else they're not going to support those things, and they're not going to speak aggressively to get those things done.
Yeah. Kyle, forget it. Dre, let's move on. No,
listen. No, let me speak. You mentioned gun control. You think there's a Democratic candidate that's not going to be in favor of gun control? They're all going to be in favor of gun control.
Kyle, the question on the table is, what are your issues that you're concerned about? That's the question on the table. We don't care. Okay, we're not talking about, we've had the conversation about the candidates. Kyle Johnson, Mr. Johnson, do you have a platform other than strong?
I don't have a platform. I'm not running
other than strong, confident, can speak well? Do you have anything
Well,
else?
for now, that's where I stand.
Okay, thank you.
Stand there.
Thank you.
Wait a minute.
Thank
You gotta let me
Brother
finish.
Johnson.
You gotta let me finish. For now, that's where it stands because we got so many candidates. But some candidates are going to be kind of weak, and some candidates will be strong. I want the stronger candidates to prevail.
Okay, but I think the question that you're not answering, which I'm not sure why you're not, if a candidate is all about global warming and you're not interested in that, that's the issue, right? So that's not an issue that you are concerned about. So that's not going to be, so that's what we're asking. Are you interested in global warming? Do you think that's an issue that impacts you and your people? Do you think that universal health care is something that impacts you or your people? That's the question that's on the table, Kyle, not what the candidate's platform is.
When the candidates speak about universal health care for everyone, my issue is, how does that get paid for?
Well, think about it. Well, think about that. I'm glad you asked the question.
But before that, is that an issue that you're not concerned about? I think that's the question.
You're only worried about how it's going to be paid for. That's what's important to you. Is that what you're saying?
Right. So if we're going to make a big to do about universal health care for everybody, where everyone gets the health care and even the immigrants coming in will get the health care and all that stuff, I don't think that's even feasible for us to talk about at this time.
Okay.
If we're going to talk about gun control, I'm in favor of gun control, but I think people in the city look at gun control differently than people in the country look at gun control. So that has to be determined, like, well, are we talking about a city person's perspective on guns or a country person's perspective on guns? Yes, a city person.
You, the city person, what is your perspective on that?
But I can't speak for everybody. Well, of course, I don't want the guy. I don't want the guy walking down the street to have a handgun tucked in his waistband. Of course, I don't want that.
For some reason,
but if I live in the suburbs,
non-committal.
All right.
What's that?
Because let me just answer your two things that you mentioned very quickly. We'll move next.
Yeah,
you mentioned how do you pay for something? Well, the last time I checked, anytime something comes up, and let's use the Iraq War, nobody stops and says, "Oh, how's that going to be paid for?" No, people are just sent off. Nobody thought about the trillions of dollars that were spent, and I neglected to finish my last statement, which was talking about lowering the debt. But the trillions of dollars, not the lives, but the trillions of dollars that were spent to go there and stay there. So when it comes to doing
let me address that issue.
Well, I'm not finished. When it comes to doing altruistic things for the people, it is always quick to ask, where's the money coming from? But when it is things that are beneficial for the rich, it is just done. It is just done. We went into Iraq not for democracy. We went in for oil. It was just done.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So if you ask the question, how do things get paid for? We ask the question, how do things get paid for all the time? And we know that if we're going into a war, it's not going to be the rich kids that are going to go fight it. It's going to be the poor kids that are going to go fight it. It's going to be the people that have less options with jobs that are going to go fight it. So that's how it's paid for. It's paid for by who goes to fight these wars.
You're talking about the man and woman power. I'm talking about the money, because if I'm talking,
I'm talking about the money and the people. Yeah, it's paid for by people. It's not just a financial issue, but it's a person issue as well.
It's a huge financial issue, because if I say that I want,
it's not just a financial issue.
If I want free education for all, and your answer is, well, who's going to pay for it? The same damn people that would have paid for it what if we went into Iraq? Everybody. And
no, that's not true.
No,
everybody doesn't pay. Everybody doesn't pay for a war.
But
everyone does not pay for a war.
But I will then attach, and let me do my quick Elizabeth Warren piece. I have a plan for that.
Let's hear it.
Her plan is we will tax XYZ at one threshold, let's say between 500 million, I believe it's 500 million to $1 billion, 2%. So everything up over $500 million in net worth will be taxed at 2%. And once you go over $1 billion, that $1 over, that's an extra 1%. So you have a question. The answer is then, pardon me, there should be an answer how it's going to be paid for. There needs to be a plan for that.
Okay.
So that way I can sit and say out the same mouth, I'd like to lower the debt. I'd like to have less money being spent in Medicare by lowering the cost of prescription drugs, because when you're talking about Medicare, there's, money's still being spent there. It's being negotiated, so on and so forth. But yes, there should always be some type of plan to pay for it. But what I was trying to allude to and got a little heated on was the mere fact that when other things come up, like a federal tax cut for the wealthy, nobody said, well, how's that going to be paid for? Or many people did say that. They looked and said, are the revenues going to come in? Oh, money's going to come swarming into the country. Hell no, it hasn't. Our debt has skyrocketed. It has skyrocketed. Matter of fact, the Federal Reserve and the Treasury started talking about it as they had to start borrowing so much more money nearly 6 months later.
Well, that's my point exactly.
It would also, when you have a plan, and we're talking about plans, it would also be very beneficial to the country as we talk and think about the candidates in reducing the debt, because then you would also not, when you have such high level debt, somebody's buying our treasuries, our treasury securities that are being auctioned. And generally it's not all US and it's not all institutional. It's governments, China, Japan. So you don't want to be at their beck and call based on the debt that they have outstanding. So yes, I agree that there should be a plan, but it doesn't mean that you don't you don't look at the issues, because the issues are very important. The issues are very important. So let's move on.
No rebuttal?
No rebuttal, dude. Let's keep going.
All right. So now you know why I'm not bringing forth these questions. There's no rebuttal.
Okay. What's your
rebuttal?
What's your rebuttal, man?
Everything requires that there's some way to do it. And when we say we're just going to give everybody health care and we're going to give everybody free college, free health care, that has to be paid for. And we have to figure out ways to pay for that. And I know Elizabeth Warren might say, I have a plan for that, but we have to see if that plan works.
Well, presently, we all pay into the system for Medicare. So all it would mean is that people would pay a little bit more. I mean, it's simple as. It's simple as. But what Audrey said, so many people have healthcare at work. Yeah, but there are still people that don't use their healthcare at work for the main purpose of some of the fees that you have to come out your pocket, the out-of-pocket expenses.
You think those are too high?
No, they are. They are. And what I like to say, what's crazy, coming from what I do for a living, you look at that and say, you have this mass pool of people that should, if all these corporations and also self-employed individuals are all using the same insurance company, and there's this threshold of people that fit in these different categories. So by by number, we should have a lower cost. But the pharma companies and the insurance companies are not making it lower. They're just profiting. They're profiting off of our blood, sweat, and tears, or the fact that maybe just our tears if we don't even use the insurance or don't have insurance. So no, I definitely say I look at taxes for many things. I can't look from the standpoint of Republicans that say, you know, everybody should have their, you know, put their own foot in the game and provide for themselves, because America is a place where if you go out and you work hard, you'll become something. You know, the American dream, that is so freaking broken. It is so freaking broken. If it wasn't, I mean, if it wasn't, we wouldn't see the state of the country as it is. When it comes to, you talked about guns, I think the only time that I see people down south that or places in rural neighborhoods that start thinking about, you know, changes to gun legislation is when somebody comes in and starts shooting up the place. So either A, we just need more mass shootings to get to everybody's head, or we come up with a plan. But the plan is never to do nothing. Right now, gun laws,
and I'm not knocking.
Gun laws by different states, by neighboring states, are so different. You need a universal plan for gun legislation or gun ownership. It's better you have a.
I'm not knocking that. I agree with that.
I mean, because we're really just talking about the same way. Say you're looking to guard your home. It's the same thing that you're talking about. The kids that are going to school, you want them to be guarded. For the person that goes to work, I go into places now, dude. I actually start thinking about stuff like that. You know, you're at a place, you don't want to sit this way. You want to pay attention to everybody inside the room. I mean, there's more legislation, or I've seen legislation over the time that I've been alive. When it comes to the seatbelt, there was legislation. It saved more lives. When you start creating laws to have people smoke less, I mean, we talk about vape smoking, and all of a sudden 12 people die, and you're coming up with a legislation. We're talking about you could have 11 people die in a mass shooting tomorrow or tonight, and there's still no legislation. You know, Audrey talked about, you know, whether it be Caucasian kids being killed and you see nothing done, so it'll never be done. Inaction is not action. And all that I've seen when we talk about gun legislation, there's been nothing but inaction, and we can all tell.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you on gun legislation. I'm saying that there does need to be changes. There needs to be changes on gun legislation. We just got to figure out how we're going to do it.
Yeah. Well, I think I've seen a president just sign off on laws without it going through Congress. You know, why not just do that? When you see people just dying, I mean, you come up with a Patriot Act to save people's lives. We didn't vote on that. But that was for our safety, so-called safety.
To make it right? Make it right?
Was it all right? No, because it infringes on it does infringe on our rights as well. But it's supposedly for our safety. You take off your shoes, take off your belt when you get to the airport. It's for our safety. You didn't get to vote on that. Hell, why not take your AK on the airplane? Since somebody downs planes, take it up there.
Why do you think that I disagree with you on this?
Actually,
I don't understand why you think
what you were saying is these people may not vote on it, but the actual, maybe we should have done this a few minutes in, is that we've noticed that it's like 90% of the U.S. wants some type of change to the gun legislation. And
I'm one of that 90%.
So going back to what our issues are important, because this is how we got on this, that's all we asked you. And if 90%, and this doesn't mean rural, city, what have you, 90% of the country based on the polls, want it.
All right. So let's get off the issues.
Let's talk
about the candidate. We're talking about the candidates. Who are we interested in?
Well, I'll tell you right now.
Give me your top three, Dre.
Well, you mentioned to me some of the Republicans. That guy Walsh is he's a racist, so he's no different than Trump. That's why he's not in Congress anymore. So I'm definitely not thinking about him. If we're looking on the Democratic side, I got to touch on age, if you guys don't mind.
Okay.
There is some age.
Can you give us your three first?
Oh, thanks, Kyle. All of a sudden, he wants to expedite things. The man that can't answer a freaking question.
You're going to give us a long thing about age, and we know what you're going to say.
All right. So go. Yeah, give us your top three.
All right. My personal top three would be Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders.
Okay.
That third one's a rough one because I have issues with her and justice.
So Kamala Harris, possibly.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris. Okay.
Yeah.
So before you say why, we might not even have enough time for why. I don't really, quite frankly, I don't have a top three because I have kind of been sitting back, kind of waiting for them to shake out. If I would have anybody, I would say maybe two would be, because these are the people I've heard the most. Beto O'Rourke. I liked him when he was running against Ted Cruz, right? Ted Cruz, right? Yeah. I felt like he was strong. I felt like he had an understanding of platform issues that also related to me during that time. And again, I didn't listen to him a lot, but just from what I heard, I did like him for that. Again, I would have to do a deeper dive with him. I would say Kamala Harris would be my other one. And to be honest, from a feel-good level, I like Marianne Williamson. I don't think she's strong enough to beat Trump, but I think that she comes from a place of, the country needs healing. And I think we do, but I think, we need a stable economy. We need to address some of these issues over anything. I think she's also talked about reparations as well as a platform, which we didn't put that on there as an issue, but I think she's talked about that. So I would say, I'm not going to say those are my top three. Those are the three that probably have my attention right now.
I'm going to agree with you when you say have your attention. I'm going to go Harris, Warren, Buttigieg.
Okay. All right. Cool. Okay. Yeah. So, like I said, I'm waiting for them to shake out.
I'm waiting for them to shake out also.
Yeah, and try to figure out how that's going to be.
And I would definitely say some of the reasons. I touched on some of the reasons why I had picked the candidates such as an Elizabeth Warren. I talked about, I think I had spoken quite a bit about the taxes. So she definitely is one that's looking to tax the rich. And I also see Bernie Sanders on that same platform. She wants to end the Electoral College. And
who?
Elizabeth Warren.
Oh, okay.
So that definitely was very important. That, of course, that's by amendment to the Constitution. Eliminating corporate tax loopholes, exemptions, and deductions. That definitely falls into big pharma. Ending private prisons. the private industry in the prison sector. That's also very important. We talked about term limits, not just within Congress, but also within the courts. That's something that she stands for. Blind trust, showing your taxes. That was also very important based on the climate that we're in. Any federal candidates and office holders have to show their taxes. You know, that would be a must. If you happen to work in the public sector, you can't trade individual stocks while you're in office. So that eliminates that conflict of interest there. And also,
are you allowed to do that now?
Yeah, by and large, a lot of those restrictions are you're not supposed to.
Meaning that it's a law or it's not a law?
It does not seem to be the law. It is one of those things where, say, for instance, if Mitch's wife, Mitch McConnell, I forget what type of business. Let's say it's a shipping business, and she's in the commerce department. That's a conflict of interest, you know, depending on what legislation she may be trying to push, or companies that may, you know, benefit from certain businesses if we start talking about infrastructure, so on and so forth. So it is not a hard line. There have been many candidates that are people within office that have been caught, you know, double dipping, so to speak. And then
is it being caught if it's not a law?
Well, they're advised when they go into office, the same way Trump was advised that his businesses should have gone into a blind trust because that's what is recommended to do. And his business is not in a blind trust. He is still.
But is that not illegal, or
it is illegal? It's you know if we had time to go into that, it is illegal. Okay. But it's definitely illegal.
And we really don't need a law for it because it's already illegal.
No. They request that you do that. So say, for instance, since we're talking about Trump, you have his hotels. You shouldn't have people staying at your hotels or businesses that are also coming to curry you for favor, because they're staying there knowing that it's putting money in your pockets, your family's pockets. They're basically trying to appease you by doing so, knowing that he likes it. The other thing is also,
I think that that's illegal, but we just haven't called him on it.
Well, there's the emolument clause.
Right, it's illegal.
Yeah, but they've laughed they've pretty much laughed at that. There are enough lawyers that have been able to allow him to sustain his business. Although he's told the American people that he wouldn't, but he is. The same way he gives away his money, supposedly his salary, it's because he's making so much more money outside of there being president. The last thing that I also liked amongst some of these candidates, I mentioned Elizabeth Warren, but it's also Bernie Sanders, is also to restrict lobbyists from entering government jobs. If you look at, we were talking about the environment earlier. I forget what position in the gentleman's name that's in office. He used to be a lobbyist, let's say for the coal industry, but now, you know, he's in there, you know, in an environmental protection job. Yeah, so that's I don't know what that noise is, but that might be telling us that our time is nearly up.
So that was me. Someone sent me an Instagram. Sorry.
Okay, cool. So those are our candidates, and when I look across the board, those are some of the things that, as I said, those are some of the characteristics of why I like them. Kamala Harris was Medicare for all. She also looked at a tax credit for the poor and the middle class. That's your problem, Kyle. Tax credit for the poor. She also looked at raising the teachers' pay, and there's several candidates that fall in line. I think Buttigieg may be one of them as well, raising teachers' pay by about, say, $14,000, which, of course, teachers are thoroughly underpaid.
Yeah, they really are.
The one issue I have with Kamala Harris is just her time in office, and she was more of a prosecutor and not really looking at reforming the justice system. It's kind of weird now to hear that she wants to reform the justice system, whereas I can remember there was a guy, he may have been in California, he may have been sitting on death row, and all of the evidence, DNA evidence that they had recently found, this is when she was still there and then eventually left office, the person that came in her place then did allow for that information to be brought forward along with the governor. She did not let that come forward, and I believe he's been exonerated. That can't just fall away from my head. I can't forget that.
Yeah, a lot of people have issues with her around that.
Yeah. So if we look,
somebody's got to prosecute the bad guys.
You're funny.
All right.
So let's look to close up here.
Election 2020. Who you got?
Who you got?
This is part one, right? This is part one. So we kind of are leaning in a certain direction.
We may have to come back. Yeah.
Yeah, we might have. As the months go on, we should come back with a part two on this, right?
I think we'll also have to talk about trying to get more than 60% of the people voting, because that's all that we had in the last general election. But
I think more people are going to vote this time.
Yeah, I think
once they realize the crazy that has come out of the non-voting, I think people are going to step up.
Yeah.
Election 2020, I'm in favor of the Democrat.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yay. Kyle. Kyle, got something to say.
So let's close this out. I know it's been a little bit longer than normal. But, yes. Election 2020, who you got? Who you got? I'd like to say thank you, all the listeners, for going through this entire podcast.
Yes.
And we look forward to bringing you more content, not just on political, social, economic, but also personal.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, thank you very much. If you like to look at any of our other content, you can definitely go to the Justifiable Noise Project on YouTube, also on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. And this video, if you're watching it, you definitely know that it is on YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you very soon.
Comment, like, share, and give us your feedback. Yeah. Take care.
Take care.
Love to hear it. Take it easy, everybody.
Bye.